A weak Christian does not have clear insight into the close and spiritual failings which cleave to his performances. He sees his gifts and takes notice of his affections, but he does not see the vanity of his mind, the unsoundness of his ends, his carnal dependence upon his duty, self-love, and vainglory. But in the course of time, a growing Christian takes notice of these things in himself. An experienced Christian will take as much notice of his failing in duty as of his ability in it. And though he discerns an enlargement of gifts and graces in himself at times, yet he still discerns most spiritual pride, popular applause, ostentation of gifts, and too much forwardness in setting out his parts, which a weak Christian seldom perceives. To have scrupulous conscience about matters of indifference argues for a weak Christian, for so the Apostle calls them, weak in the faith, who bind the conscience when the Scriptures leaves it free. One believer thought he might eat anything, and another doubted the lawfulness of eating sundry things. Now those who doubted the Apostle called weak, and the weak conscience is apt to be defiled. Not to know our liberty and to abuse our liberty is an argument that we have but little grace. Young converts call more things sins than ever God did. They perplex and entangle themselves merely in indifferent things. It is true there ought to be a consciousness, tenderness in all Christians. Tenderness of conscience is our duty, but a tormenting, entangling scrupulosity is our infirmity, and yet as a weak Christian is better than no Christian. A weak faith is better than a sheared conscience. To be intently set on the exercise of religion is to neglect our particular callings, as is a sign we are but weak in grace. It was a good saying of the famous man of God, Dr. Richard Sibbes. I like that Christian well that will hear much and live much, that will pray much and work much. In young converts the affections are strong and stirring, and they think they can never hear enough. Many times they neglect the duties of their callings, but argues their weakness and infirmity. An experienced grown Christian is regular in his general and particular calling, so that the one shall not jostle and hinder the others. To hold men's persons in admiration argues weakness in grace. Such were the Corinthians. The Apostle called them children, babes, though they had the life of Christians, yet they had but little of the strength of Christians. They are carnal, they favour the flesh more than the spirit. Ignorance is often the cause of admiration. We Christians who have but little knowledge are apt to be so taken with men's persons that one cries, I am of Paul, another, I am of Apollos. So they fall into sin, condemned of combining the faith of Christ with respect of persons, so as to cry up one minister and cry down others. To idolize some and despise others argues that you are in weak faith. A solid Christian loves all good ministers and can condemn none. To be easily seduced and led away into error also argues weakness in grace. The Apostle Paul calls these children who are tossed to and fro and carried about for every wind of doctrine. Weakness of head argues that grace is not very strong in your heart. Last, a weak Christian is one who cannot bear reproof. Sharp weather discovers whether you are of a weak or sound body, so a sharp reproof will discover whether you are of a weak spiritual temper and constitution. When Nathan came to David, he could bear the reproof, though the prophet told him to his face that he was a man who had sinned. Asa, who, though a good man, could not endure the faithful reproof of a prophet, but was wroth with the seer and put him into the prison house.